Peace and greetings. This is the Art of Smith Yoga podcast. What is an altar? An altar is an energy center. It is your own personal energy center, right? It works as somewhat of a gateway between this world and the spirit realm. Now, talking about creating your own altar, what kind of altar do you want? Do you want an altar for your ancestors, or do you want an altar for a deity, or do you want an altar for crystals, to energize crystals? What kind of altar do you want? That's the first question you want to ask yourself. I'm going to talk about the base foundations for an altar, and from this foundation you can create whatever kind of altar you want, because what we're doing here is tapping into our imagination, our own creativity, in order to make that connection to the spirit realm. That's how you make the connection into the spirit realm. It's through your creativity, through your imagination, through creating things that resonate with you. So let's talk about an altar for the ancestors. Now, first off, when you don't just say the ancestors. You don't just build an altar for just have an altar that says, okay, this is an ancestor altar. It There needs to be a person that you either know or know of. You have information on them, you know who they are. That person is one of your ancestors, one of your relatives. You want to know, you want to have a particular person that you're talking about. Or it can be particular people. It can be grandmother, grandfather, all the yes. But you need to know, right? You don't just want to just don't want to randomly say the ancestor. That's a waste of energy, just doing it that way. So you have a particular relative or ancestor that you want to make a connection with. Now, it really helps if you're directly related to the person, but you don't have to be directly related to the person in order to make that connection with them. We're talking about connecting with an ancestor. We're talking about connecting with someone who is no longer in this physical realm. You can do that, and they don't necessarily have to be your blood relative, right? So I'll probably get into that in another video, maybe a little bit more in this video. I might talk about it, but so what are the foundations of setting up the altar? So you want the altar, if at all possible, to be made out of like wood or metal. You don't want to have an altar made out of plastic. Okay. What there are five. You want to have the five elements represented on your altar. That's going to give it a really good, solid grounding foundation. Okay. The earth, you can have like some dirt or a twig or a leaf or something that represents earth. That can be on the altar. Of course, you can just have a little small glass of water on the altar. You can have an incense on the altar, and the incense is air and space. The incense represents air and space, and then you can have a candle burning, which is going to represent your fire. So you have those things, some water, maybe a little small leaf or branch, an incense burning, and a candle burning. Okay. From there, this is where the imagination takes place, and the imagination still takes place on those particular things. They can be anything in that realm. It doesn't have to be, you know, a glass of water. It can be milk. It can be tea. Whatever. So you can move these things around. So, but this is where the imagination starts to the imagination and what it resonates with you, this is where this starts to take place. So you find out who the ancestor is that you want to make a connection with. Okay. And then what you do is your research. Say, for instance, this particular ancestor that you want to make a connection with, say, for instance, they liked a particular type of drink. Their favorite thing was Pepsi. Their favorite soda to drink, everybody told, yeah, Uncle Jack loved Pepsi. That was his thing. Well, what you can do is put a Pepsi on the altar. Crack open the Pepsi, and see, this is where the imagination comes into play again. You can just put a can of Pepsi up there, or you can open it up, put it on ice like he liked to drink it, like maybe he liked to add something to it, whatever. You do what Uncle Jack liked to do, what you think Uncle Jack would like. You put that on the altar, right? And then from there, you can put on the altar what resonates with you and your Uncle Jack. What the thing that, yeah, man, this was the thing that he and I resonated with. Or if you don't, if you didn't have a personal relationship with him, just knowing, okay, they told me that he liked this particular thing, he liked that particular thing, and you put it on your altar. And again, you know what I mean? You can start to elaborate from there. You can start to add things that resonate with you, that make sense for you. So let's talk about a deity altar. The main difference between a deity altar and an ancestor altar is the fact that you do not want to have them meshed together. You don't want to have You don't want to have a deity and an ancestor on the same altar. That's the main separation. You just don't want to have You want to have two separate ones. You want to have an ancestor and a deity. That's the main difference. Really, a lot of the same. Basically all of the principles are the same. Okay, basically all of the principles are the same. Now let me talk real quick about deity, and let me talk about the difference between working with and worshiping. Okay, working with and worshiping. I don't worship the deity that I work with on my altar. I work with the energy of that deity. I work with the energy of that deity. Okay? I don't worship my ancestor. I work with the energy of my ancestor via the altar. That's a big separation in terminology and wording for me. If you want to use the word worship, if that's what resonates with you, hey, use the word worship. For me, I work with the energy. Now, when you worship something, you're putting yourself underneath and below, and you're putting yourself under the dominion of someone else. Now, I'm gonna get personal here real quick. I don't worship the deity that I work with on my altar, but I do worship God. I worship God in the form of the divine feminine, Lily, the great mother Sophia, and in the physical form, my wife. That's who I worship. But I work with the energy of the deities, because when you worship something, you bow down and you give up everything for that. You like, okay, whatever you want is your will. And some people don't worship. Some people don't worship anything. They just work with the energy of something, and that's fine. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about working with the energy of the deity. And that's what I do. I work with the energy of the deity, and I work with the energy of the ancestors. So we talked about the elements, and so we talked about the difference between the ancestor and the deity altar. or the ancestor and the deity altar, and that difference is just the fact that you want to have two separate places, two separate altars for one deity, one ancestor. So talking more about the deity altar and working with, not worshiping, in case that's what you want, that's great, but working with the deities. So you look at the particular deity that we'll use Hanuman as an example. So you do your research on Hanuman. You get yourself a little Hanuman statue maybe and put it up on the altar, and you have all the elements represented, and then you do your research and you find out what are the things that Hanuman liked. And it's a Google search. It'll pull it up super quick. You know, what does the deity Hanuman like? What does the deity Ganesh like? What does the deity Shiva like? What, whatever. And then you get those things, a little small candy or whatever, and you put it on the altar and you work with the energy of the deity. So we're talking about working with the energy of a deity. What does that mean? Right? What does that mean? That means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Okay. And what we're doing here is, in its core and in its essence, what we're doing is tapping into our own subconscious mind, our own being. It's really nothing out there. It's really nothing out there. It's just helping us make the connection to something that's going on in here inside of us. These deities, these ancestors, all of these things that we are working with, doing the spiritual work, the sadhana, all of it is so we can make that connection with what's going on in here inside of us. That's the one thing that remains the constant in all of these different types of spiritual practices, and in all of these different type of sadhanas and ways to go about it. So the deity altar, you get things that you think would resonate with that particular deity. You do your research on it and you put those things up on the altar. And so you work with the energy. How do you work with the energy of it? Well, number one, you do not approach energy with a lack mentality. When you're begging for something, that means you are missing something. Not necessarily missing something. When you're begging, that means you're ungrateful to a certain extent, and you're not in a abundant, and you're not in a receiving energy. You can't receive when you're begging. That, and I know that's kind of hard to conceptualize, but it's, if you have so much tension and fear and you're begging and begging, that tension and that fear causes people and things to be pushed away from you. But if you are in a state of gratitude and grateful for whatever small thing you might have, whatever it is, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful to be able to get up and go to work. I'm grateful for the people around. You find that is what's going to um, help you propel that. So yeah, this is basically tapping into our higher self. We're using all of these methods, all of these techniques in order to tap into our higher self, right? Tap into God, tap into the Akashic records, whatever, however you want, however it makes the most sense to you, right? May this video add benefit to your life.